Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and hope you guys are having a good day and really appreciate y'all checking out today's video and spending some time with me. And guys, today we're going to be talking about the new Scamper rig and how you can use it on a floating worm. This is a brand new invention from Core Tackle. I'm going to show you guys how to rig it up on a floating worm. Actually, I'm going to show you my entire floating worm rig setup, because at the time of filming this video, it's April 1st, and we are in the prime time for floating worm. This is the month you want to throw it. So we're going to get into some good tips and advice. I think you guys are going to have some exciting action on this setup over the next month or so. Also, guys, before we get started, just a couple of our daily housekeeping tips. Just want to invite everybody to please consider hitting that subscribe button here to Intuitive Angling. It's a good way to help the channel out, free and easy to do so. And also, anyone interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, you can do that by going to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler, and just shoot me a private message for info. So I really appreciate that. Okay guys, I did a video on the new Scamper rig actually last month talking about some other applications, but I mentioned it at the time that this thing is going to be freaking killer for a floating worm, which is it is, because I've been fishing this some over the past week or so. And guys, what it does to a floating worm in terms of the action it puts on it, there's nothing else that can touch it. This is truly a revolutionary deal. Now, this is the Scamper rig, guys, here. This is sort of the signature Core Tackle setup. You got a nice, this is about a 2 or 3/0 hook with an O'Shaughnessy bend. The O'Shaughnessy bend is the best hook for hooking fish, and it's got a lead on the shank of the hook right here. Now, this is the whole key with it. Now, I'm gonna show you guys how to rig it and how I set it up, because I do it the same way that I rig with my regular straight shank hook. Prior to the Scamper rig, I just used the straight shank Gamakatsu on there, but this is sort of taken over for me. So let me show you the setup that I use on it, and then we're gonna get into all the details about fishing it. Okay, now the first thing you wanna do on it is you need to throw a floating worm on a spinning rod. Spinning rod is the best equipment for it. Normally, there's two things that I do with it. I usually use straight 8-pound test Seaguar Visex fluorocarbon for the main leader and for the the leader for the main line and the leader. Sometimes I will use 10-pound test Seaguar Visex braided line, and I'll use a fluorocarbon leader, the Seaguar Visex fluorocarbon leader, if the water's a little bit stained. And what I do, guys, and this is key, you want to attach it with a barrel swivel. So I take a barrel swivel, attach it to the main line, and then I usually run probably about a foot. You don't really want anything over a foot because it's sort of hard to cast. So you want to put your leader line about a foot or so, and then tie your Scamper rig to it. And also, guys, Tackle Warehouse just got these Scamper rigs in this week. So I'll link my Tackle Warehouse link in the description to the Scamper rig if you guys want to pick some up. There's no doubt these things will get sold out this week, so you better jump on it if you want to get some. Okay, so that's the setup with it. Okay, the next thing to do with it is take your worm, and the best floating worm, guys, is a Zoom trick worm. You don't really need anything else. Zoom trick worm is the standard for it. And what you want to do with it is you're going to thread this thing on. Now, it's very important. What you want to do is come through the rib side right here. You got a flat side like that, and you got a rib side. You want to come through the rib side and just go super slow, because it really makes a big difference. If you thread this on and you get that hook off to the side a little bit, the worm it sort of spins, it doesn't run straight. So really focus and take your time of running that thing, super, super slow right through the center part of the worm. And you're gonna wanna come out, see the egg sac right there? You're gonna wanna come out right in the middle of that egg sac. So I'll sort of show you here. See how I got that? We're coming out right at the egg sac. And then you want to pull it up like this, cover the shank of the hook with it. And the key on this, which a lot of people don't understand, is you want to leave the worm crooked like this. It's not straight, it's crooked. Now this is going to act as a keel. And what this does is when you have it crooked like this, you can walk the dog with it, like a Zara spook. This is a big, big deal here. Most people don't rig them like this, so that's how it's gonna look when you set it up right there. Nice little hook point coming out. It doesn't really matter if you got the point coming out there, because a lot of times it falls down anyway. But that, the lead on there keeps it in place where you can't hardly pull it off. It's on there for good. So the rig sort of looks like this. This is a floating worm rig. And again, I usually throw it on the Mega Bass, either the Addermine spinning rod or the whip snake model, large diameter 3000 series reel. Okay, so that's the setup with it. Now let's talk a little bit about, so you can sort of see how there's the barrel and the hairs. Let's talk a little bit about how to work it first, and then we're going to talk about the most important part of it, aside from the rigging, is the areas you want to fish it in. Now, when you're fishing a floating worm, it's sort of a misnomer. You don't want the worm on the surface. That they used to fish it like that, but one of the reasons that I like the Scamper rig here with the weight on it is I like to fish a floating worm down in the water column. So most of the time when I'm fishing a floating worm, I fish it like a jerkbait in terms of trying to get it down deeper. So a lot of it depends on the cover that I'm fishing. If I'm fishing shallow cover that's visible, I'll keep the worm higher in the water, like maybe that far underneath the surface next to it. But sometimes if I'm just going down the bank or fishing points or something, I'll throw it out there and I'll count it down. I'll let it sink for maybe 5 or 6 seconds, and then I'll start working it, and the bait is actually 4 to 5 feet under the water. I've caught a lot of good fish doing that. That's sort of a trick with a floating worm. A lot of people don't let that floating worm fall deep, but guys, a floating worm fished in 5 to 6 feet of water is a deadly technique. I mean, it really, really works good. Now, most of the time when I throw it out there, guys, I'll just make a long cast with it, throw it out there. I'll keep my rod tip down to the spinning rod, and I'm just twitching it just like that, just always moving. So twitch, 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 twitch. What I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to get that worm going back and forth. So if you've ever fished like a walking topwater, like a Zaraspook or something, just pretend you're fishing a Zaraspook and watch the bait in terms of how far it darts, and then you can adjust it with that. Now you can fish a floating worm at a lot of different speeds. And what I have found is the cleaner the water, the faster you want to work it, and the more the stained water is, the slow it down a little bit so the fish can get a hold of it. So let's say, for example, if I'm fishing where the water visibility is really clear, maybe like 6 feet, I'll throw it out there, let it sink 3 or 4 feet, and I'll work like boom, 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 and it's just sort of darting through the water like that, which is really good in that clear water because they don't have the time to get a good look at it, and they really, really hammer it hard like that. But if I'm fishing in water visibility that's maybe 1.5 feet or 2, stained water like that, that's when I'm slowing it down. I'm just going boom, boom, boom. Maybe even let it sink a little bit, slow it down in that little bit more stained water. Now here is the ideal situation for it, what you're looking for. First of all, I like to have water temperatures a minimum of the upper 50s. Really from about 57 to 70 degrees is perfect. Therefore, like, depending upon what part of the country you're in, March, April, and May are gonna be the prime months. One of the things about fishing a floating worm like this with the Scamper rig is you're gonna find out that the bass bite a floating worm the best earlier in the season before bass see it a lot, because a floating worm like this is a really bright lure. And this is something that the fish can get conditioned to very easily. So normally the floating worm is the best for about the first 2 or 3 weeks when they start biting it. And then after that, like when you start getting into late April and May, you'll have a lot of bass that actually follow a floating worm, like a glide bait or swim bait, and don't bite it, or they'll bite the tail of it. But early in the year like that, that's when they really bite it good. Also, you'll find out colors are very important too. As you can see, I've got a bunch of different colors of my floating worms here, and it just really depends on the water visibility and the sky condition. The darker the day, like windy and cloudy, the more that I'm using the brighter colors. And then if the sun comes up and you lose your wind, the more natural colors are going to work better. But Zoom has a bunch of different colors. I'll put that link in the description too if you guys want to get you some of the Zoom worms with it. So sort of like, it's like anything else, match your color to the light intensity conditions, the water visibility, the sunlight conditions, time of day, all that type of stuff. Another thing that's going to help you out in the springtime of the year with the floating worm is concentrate on shade. Shade is always going to be your high percentage area. So if you get on a shady bank, or maybe the shady side of a lay down tree, or wherever you can find shade at, that's always the best deal with it. Now, one of the things about fishing a floating worm in the springtime of year, they will bite it around a lot of different stuff, but I'm always trying to concentrate on those areas those fish are getting ready to move up into spawn. So therefore, Best areas for me on a floating worm are your flatter banks. Flatter banks, coves, bays, protected areas where those fish are getting up ready to spawn. And usually this is how I do it. I'll go into like a big cove where I think, it's prime spawning type area. Not necessarily the fish are up there spawning, but it's maybe place or they're getting ready to move into, or if you're in Maid or, garden fry or whatever. And I just simply start at the mouth of the cove and I work my way around the entire cove, because you can literally get bites from one end to the other. If you can get bites on a floating worm in the first half of the cove you're in, they're always bigger fish. And normally the smaller fish are in the back of the coves, because the back of the coves get the most fishing pressure. Most people, guys, they're like a herd of cows, bass anglers are to a large degree, because most of them run right to the back of the coves. If you ever notice it in the springtime of year, people make a beeline to the back of the coves, and those fish, they don't put up with that. So if you got, I don't know how many times in April that I've been fishing a creek or something and I see one cove, I may see 20 boats coming in and out of that cove in an hour or two. So, and they go straight to the back. So try to stay out of the back of the coves, because most of the time those fish have been plucked off and they're normally smaller. Again, concentrate on the front part of the coves. The fish are going to be a lot bigger with that. But floating worm, guys, it is one of the most funnest bait to fish. It's also very conditionally with weather. You are always going to do better on a floating worm if you have a warmer south wind with some type of overcast. That's the best situation. I will give you one piece of advice on it. If a cold front goes through and you have a north wind, put the thing in your rod locker. They're not going to bite it. And if they do, they're just going to look at it. I have found that from fishing a floating worm for 35 years that, if I got clouds and low light conditions and warm conditions and a south wind, they will bite it, but they don't on a north wind. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to show you about the Scamper rig. The cool thing about it, it allows you to cast longer. It allows you to get that bait down deeper. It allows you to work the bait a little bit faster. It's just a lot more efficient hook setup over just a straight shank without that little lead on it. And again, link in the description if you guys want to get some. I'm going to have them rigged up for my next tournament already. So hope it helps you guys catch a few, and we'll talk later.